The janitor's uniform felt heavy in Elijah Grant's hands, a calculated insult from the sneering staff of Maison Leclerc, who deemed him unworthy of their luxury merchandise. "This is all you can afford," they mocked, filming him for social media. Laughs. 24 hours later, these same employees stood frozen as Elijah returned in a Tom Ford suit, sliding his business card across the counter. Elijah Grant, CEO, Meridian Capital Partners. Their smiles collapsed as realization dawned. The black man they'd humiliated wasn't just wealthy enough to shop there, he was wealthy enough to buy the entire store. And by week's end, that's exactly what he did. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The glass doors of Maison Leclerc slid open with a quiet hiss. Elijah Grant stepped inside, the cool air of the luxury store washing over him. His plain attire, worn jeans, a simple button-up shirt and wire-rimmed glasses, blended with nothing in the glittering space around him. No watch adorned his wrist, no designer labels announced his presence. Just a man, unassuming and calm, entering a world built on appearances. He moved slowly through the displays, fingertips occasionally brushing against fabrics worth more than what most people earned in a month. The lighting was perfect, designed to make everything shimmer just so, to transform ordinary objects into coveted treasures. Elijah observed it all with quiet attention, noticing how heads turned his way, how eyes lingered, then dismissed him. "Can I help you find anything?" The question came from a young woman behind the counter. Her name tag read Emma, and unlike the others, her smile seemed genuine. "Just browsing for now, thank you," Elijah replied, his voice warm but reserved. Across the room, Priscilla Wilson, the store manager, watched the interaction with narrow eyes. Tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit, she leaned toward her assistant manager, Kyle Thompson. "Another window shopper," she muttered, not bothering to lower her voice. "If he can't afford the clothes, maybe he can clean up after them." Kyle, young and eager to please, chuckled on cue. "Want me to keep an eye on him?" "Don't bother," Priscilla replied. "He'll realize soon enough this isn't his place." Brent Mitchell, one of the older salespeople who'd been with the store for decades, gave a condescending laugh as he arranged a display nearby. "These people never learn." Elijah pretended not to hear, though his shoulders stiffened slightly. He continued his inspection of the store, methodically taking in each section, menswear, accessories, footwear, while ignoring the stares that followed him. The backroom door swung open as Kyle entered, where several staff members were on break. The conversation died as he strutted in. "You guys should see what walked in," Kyle announced, pouring himself coffee. "Dude probably works at McDonald's thinking he can shop here." "What's he wearing?" asked one of the salesgirls. "Target's finest," Kyle snorted. "Bet he doesn't even know what haute couture means." Priscilla entered, her heels clicking authoritatively on the tile floor. "He's still out there, looking at things he could never afford." "Maybe we'll give him a mop," Kyle suggested, "just in case he wants to clean up after the rich people." The room erupted in laughter, all except for Emma, who had slipped in quietly, behind Priscilla, her face flushed with discomfort. "Shouldn't we treat all customers the same?" Emma asked, her voice small but clear. The laughter stopped abruptly. All eyes turned to her. "Oh, sweetie," Priscilla said, her tone dripping with condescension. "You're new here, so let me explain. This is Maison Leclerc. We cater to a certain clientele, people who understand luxury, who can appreciate what we offer. And more importantly," she leaned in, "people who can actually buy our products." Emma looked down, not wanting to cause more conflict on her third week at the job. She needed this position. The pay was better than any retail job she'd had before, and her student loans weren't going to pay themselves. "Just watch and learn," Kyle added with a smirk. "Some people need to be reminded of their place." Outside in the showroom, Elijah had made his way to a section of fine suits. His fingers traced the lapel of a charcoal gray jacket, feeling the quality of the wool beneath his touch. Brent approached him, the smile on his face not reaching his eyes. "Finding everything all right, sir?" "Yes, thank you," Elijah replied. "This is nice craftsmanship." Brent's smile tightened. "It's our fall collection. The suit runs about 8,000. "I see." Elijah nodded, continuing to inspect the garment. "Perhaps," Brent said, reaching behind the counter, "this is more in your price range." He pulled out a neatly folded uniform, the kind worn by the store's janitorial staff. "This is probably all you can afford from here." For a moment, the store seemed to go silent. Elijah looked at the uniform, then back at Brent's smug face. Emma, who had returned to her post, watched the scene unfold with horror, her hand covering her mouth. Without a word, Elijah took the uniform, folded it carefully over his arm, and walked out of the store. His face revealed nothing, no anger, no humiliation, just a quiet dignity that somehow made the moment all the more powerful. The door closed behind him, and the staff, minus Emma, erupted in laughter. "Did you see his face?" Kyle howled. "Priceless." Priscilla agreed. "That should keep the riffraff out." Emma turned away, her stomach churning with shame. This wasn't what she had signed up for. The sun was setting when Elijah entered his hotel room at the Ritz-Carlton. He placed the janitor's uniform on the bed and removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. The room was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. He walked to the window, watching as lights began to flicker on across the skyline. His reflection stared back at him, a man who had come from nothing, who had worked his way up from the very bottom, who now controlled more wealth than anyone in that store could imagine. Elijah wasn't angry. He'd faced worse prejudice in boardrooms across America. What troubled him was how casual it had been, how normalized. The store wasn't just selling luxury, it was selling exclusion. He picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Chloe Roberts," answered a crisp, professional voice. "It's me," Elijah said. "How did it go?" Chloe asked, her tone softening slightly. "About as expected," Elijah replied. "The store has potential, but the culture is toxic. The manager is the worst offender, encourages the behavior in the others." "And your decision?" "We're moving forward with the acquisition," Elijah said firmly. "But we're going to need to clean house. The current staff has to go." There was a pause on the other end. "All of them?" "There's one who might be salvageable. Young woman, new hire. She seemed uncomfortable with how I was treated." "What exactly happened, Elijah?" Chloe's voice was concerned now. "They handed me a janitor's uniform," he said simply. "Told me it was all I could afford." Chloe's sharp intake of breath was audible. "Jesus, Elijah. It's not about revenge, Chloe. It's about fixing a broken system. Maison Leclerc could be something better, a luxury brand that treats everyone with dignity." "I understand. What's your next move?" "I'm going back tomorrow. Different approach this time. I want to see how they behave when they think I have money." After hanging up, Elijah sat on the edge of the bed, memories flooding back. His mother working 3 jobs to make ends meet. The sacrifices she'd made for his education. The suits he couldn't afford when he was interviewing for his first job out of business school. The time he'd been mistaken for a waiter at a finance dinner, despite wearing his best clothes. He'd built his empire on the idea that everyone deserved respect, regardless of what they wore or where they came from. Now, he had a chance to extend that philosophy to a brand that had lost its way. Meanwhile, Emma sat alone in her small apartment, staring at her laptop screen without really seeing it. The events of the day kept replaying in her mind, the quiet dignity of the customer, the cruel laughter of her colleagues. She had taken this job at Maison Leclerc because it represented everything she aspired to. Elegance, sophistication, success. Now she was questioning everything. Was this really the industry she wanted to be part of? Were these the people she wanted to become? Her phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. "Great first day in the trenches. You'll get used to dealing with the peasants. Drinks tomorrow?" Emma didn't reply. Instead, she opened her resume and stared at it, wondering if she should start looking for another job. Across town, in a wood-paneled boardroom, the corporate executives of Maison Leclerc's parent company were reviewing quarterly reports, unaware of the forces already in motion that would soon shake their foundation. Profits are down again, said one board member, frowning at the spreadsheet in front of him. It's the economy, another argued. Luxury spending is always the first to take a hit. Perhaps, said a third, it's time we considered new ownership. The Willis Group has expressed interest. They continued their discussion late into the night, debating the future of a company they viewed merely as an asset, a line item on a balance sheet. None of them imagined that by the end of the week, their decisions would no longer matter. In his hotel room, Elijah Grant prepared for bed, hanging up his simple clothes next to the janitor's uniform, a stark reminder of why he was really there. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he would reveal another side of himself and begin the process of transformation, not just for Maison Leclerc, but for everyone who had ever been judged by their appearance rather than their character. Morning. Light filtered through the blinds of Elijah's hotel room as he adjusted his tie. Today's attire was a far cry from yesterday's casual wear. A custom Tom Ford suit in navy blue, a crisp white shirt with platinum cufflinks, and Italian leather shoes polished to a mirror shine. A Patek Philippe watch adorned his wrist, and his glasses had been replaced with designer frames. The reflection that stared back at him was the Elijah Grant that Forbes had featured on its cover, the CEO whose private equity firm had revitalized failing businesses across the country, not the man who had been handed a janitor's uniform. Elijah wasn't playing dress-up. These clothes were as much a part of him as the worn jeans had been, two sides of the same coin, the boy from the projects who had never forgotten his roots, and the businessman who had learned to navigate the upper echelons of wealth. When he entered Maison Leclerc for the second time, the reaction was immediate. Heads turned, but this time in appreciation rather than dismissal. The security guard, who had watched him like a hawk yesterday, now straightened his posture and nodded respectfully. Priscilla spotted him first, her eyes widening slightly as she took in his appearance. She whispered something to Kyle, who quickly adjusted his tie and plastered on his most ingratiating smile. "Welcome to Maison Leclerc, sir," Priscilla purred, approaching Elijah with the practiced grace of someone who had spent years perfecting the art of flattery. "How may we assist you today?" Elijah regarded her coolly. "I'm interested in your fall collection. I saw some pieces yesterday that caught my eye." A flash of recognition crossed Priscilla's face, quickly replaced by professional composure. "Of course, sir. Kyle here will be happy to show you our finest selections. May I ask what brings you to our store?" "Business," Elijah replied simply. "I've been hearing things about Maison Leclerc. Thought I'd see for myself." Priscilla's smile faltered slightly. "All good things, I hope." "That remains to be seen," Elijah said, his gaze steady. "Tell me about your management philosophy. How do you approach customer service?" "At Maison Leclerc, we believe in exceptional service for exceptional clientele," Priscilla recited smoothly. "Our customers expect the very best, and we deliver nothing less." "And who qualifies as exceptional clientele?" Elijah pressed. "Why, discerning individuals like yourself, of course," Priscilla responded without missing a beat. "People who appreciate true luxury." Elijah nodded, filing away her words. "I see. And everyone receives this exceptional service?" A slight hesitation. "We treat all of our customers with respect, sir." "Interesting." Elijah turned away from her, spotting Emma at the counter. "I'd like to look around on my own for a moment." "Of course," Priscilla said, clearly reluctant to let such a promising customer out of her sight. "Kyle will be nearby if you need anything." Elijah made his way to Emma's counter, noting how she avoided making eye contact with him. "Hello again," he said quietly. Emma looked up, her expression a mixture of recognition and embarrassment. "Hello. Sir, can I help you with something?" "I hope so," Elijah replied. "You seem to understand something your colleagues don't." "What's that?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That the clothes don't make the man," Elijah said. "Your professionalism yesterday was noted. It stands in stark contrast to the rest of the staff. Emma's cheeks flushed. Thank you, but I didn't do anything special. Basic decency often feels that way, Elijah observed. It shouldn't be special, but sometimes it is. From across the store, Priscilla and Kyle watched, the interaction with growing unease. Something's off about him, Priscilla muttered. He seems familiar. Maybe he's someone important? Kyle suggested. If he was, we would know, Priscilla dismissed. Probably just some mid-level executive trying to play in the big leagues. Brent joined them. His eyes narrowed as he observed Elijah. What's a joke like him doing back here? Acting like he belongs in that suit. Keep your voice down, Priscilla hissed. He could be a big sale. Or a big waste of time, Brent countered. I've been in this business for 30 years. I can spot a fake when I see one. Elijah, seemingly absorbed in examining a display of watches, was actually listening intently to their hushed conversation. He deliberately dropped a small leather accessory on the floor, then looked expectantly at Kyle, who was now approaching. Excuse me, Elijah said. Would you mind? Kyle glanced at the fallen item, then back at Elijah, his smile never wavering. Our cleaning staff will take care of that, sir. Now, about those watches you were admiring. Elijah stood still, his expression unreadable. I see. Emma, having witnessed the exchange, quickly came over and picked up the item herself. Here you go, sir, she said, handing it to Elijah with a genuine smile. Thank you, Emma, Elijah replied, making a point of reading her name tag. Your assistance is appreciated. When Emma returned to her station, Kyle cornered her in the stockroom. What was that about? He demanded. What? Emma asked, genuinely confused. Making me look bad in front of a customer, Kyle snapped. We don't pick up after them. That's what we have staff for. It was just a small thing, Emma defended. It took 2 seconds. That's not the point, Kyle said. Know your place, Emma. You're new here. Don't try to change how things work. 3. Kyle left. Emma leaned against the wall, a familiar weight of doubt settling on her shoulders. She had taken this job to be part of something prestigious, something special. Instead, she found herself in an environment that seemed designed to crush the very values her parents had instilled in her. Meanwhile, Elijah continued his methodical inspection of the store, occasionally engaging with other staff members, asking subtle questions that revealed their attitudes and approaches to customer service. Most failed his implicit tests, prioritizing appearance over substance, assumptions over genuine engagement. In the employee break room, Priscilla was venting to a small group of staff. I'm sick of dealing with the riffraff, she complained. This is a luxury store, not a community center. People like that man yesterday shouldn't even be allowed through the door. Did you see the video I posted? Kyle asked, pulling out his phone. It's getting tons of likes. He showed them a short clip he'd secretly recorded of Elijah being handed the janitor's uniform, with the caption, "This is all he could afford from here." The comments section was filled with laughing emojis and cruel jokes. Take that down, Emma said suddenly, surprising even herself with her boldness. The room fell silent. Excuse me, Priscilla said, her voice dangerously soft. That's not right. Emma continued, her heart racing but her resolve firm. He was a customer. We shouldn't be mocking people online. Oh, please, Kyle scoffed. It was funny. Everyone thinks so. What if he sees it? Emma pressed. What if he reports it to corporate? And who's going to care? Priscilla countered. Corporate only cares about numbers, and trust me, that man's opinion doesn't count in anyone's books. Emma looked around the room, searching for any sign of support, but found none. I just think it could come back to haunt us, that's all. You're being naive, Priscilla said dismissively. This is how the real world works, Emma. The sooner you learn that, the better off you'll be. The conversation moved on, but Emma remained troubled. She excused herself and returned to the sales floor, where she found Elijah examining a display of leather goods. Finding everything okay? She asked, her professional demeanor back in place. Yes, thank you, Elijah replied. Then, lowering his voice, he added, It must be difficult working in this environment. Emma hesitated, unsure how to respond. It's challenging sometimes. I imagine it is, Elijah said, especially for someone who seems to value integrity. Before Emma could respond, Priscilla appeared beside them, her smile fixed in place. Sir, if you're interested in our leather collection, we just received some exclusive pieces that aren't on display yet. Perhaps you'd like to see them. Thank you, but I think I've seen enough for today, Elijah replied. He handed Emma his business card. If you have any questions about career opportunities, feel free to reach out. Emma glanced at the card, her eyes widening slightly as she read the name. Elijah Grant, CEO, Meridian Capital Partners. Priscilla, reading over Emma's shoulder, visibly paled. Mr. Grant, she stammered. I had no idea. Few people do when they first meet me, Elijah said calmly. That's often quite revealing. As he walked out of the store, leaving a stunned silence in his wake, Elijah pulled out his phone and called Chloe. We're ready for the next phase, he said as soon as she answered. Start the acquisition process. Already on it, Chloe replied. What about the staff? Elijah paused, looking back at the storefront. Through the glass, he could see Priscilla gesturing frantically to the others, no doubt explaining who had just walked out their door. Most of them are beyond redemption, he said finally. But there's one who might be worth salvaging. We'll see. Inside the store, Emma stared at the business card in her hand, a mixture of emotions swirling within her. Fear, confusion, and underneath it all, a small flicker of hope that perhaps change was finally coming to Maison Leclerc. What none of them realized was that Elijah Grant wasn't just planning to buy their store. He was preparing to transform the very foundation on which it stood. And in the process, he would test not just their professional conduct, but the very essence of who they were as people. The morning after his second visit to Maison Leclerc, Elijah sat in a private conference room at his hotel, surrounded by stacks of financial reports, employee records, and customer surveys. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the documents spread across the polished oak table. Chloe Roberts sat across from him, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her attention fixed on her tablet as she swiped through digital files. The numbers don't lie, Elijah, she said, looking up at him. Maison Leclerc has been hemorrhaging money for the past 3 years. Customer retention is abysmal, and their online reviews... She grimaced. Let's just say people don't forget being treated poorly. Elijah nodded, studying a graph that showed steady decline. What about staffing issues? High turnover among lower-level employees. The only constants are Priscilla Wilson, who's been manager for 8 years, Kyle Thompson, her right hand for 3 years, and Brent Mitchell, who's been there for nearly 2 decades. Chloe slid a folder toward him. And I found something interesting about Ms. Wilson. Elijah opened the folder to find meticulously organized financial records. She's been skimming. Systematically, Chloe confirmed. Small amounts from the register, falsified returns, phantom discounts that go into her pocket. Nothing large enough to trigger automatic alerts, but over time, she let the implication hang in the air. How much? Elijah asked, his expression darkening. By my calculation, around $87,000 over the past 3 years. Elijah closed the folder, his jaw tightening. And Kyle? Chloe pulled up another document, on her tablet. He's been manipulating the commission structure, taking credit for sales he didn't make, particularly from newer employees who don't understand the system yet. She hesitated. There's also the matter of his social media activity. She showed Elijah the video Kyle had posted of their first encounter. It had thousands of views and hundreds of comments, most laughing at Elijah's expense. The caption read, "Another day, another dreamer thinking he belongs here, know your place." Charming, Elijah said, his voice calm despite the fire in his eyes. And Brent? That's where it gets truly disturbing, Chloe said, her professional demeanor slipping to reveal genuine disgust. We received an anonymous tip after news of the potential acquisition leaked. Several former employees came forward with stories about Brent's behavior, particularly toward Black and Hispanic customers. She handed Elijah a thick folder containing complaint forms, witness statements, and internal emails that had been buried by management. As he read through them, his expression remained neutral, but his hands gripped the papers more tightly. Racial profiling, following customers around the store, forgetting to process returns for certain demographics, Chloe summarized. And Priscilla covered for him every time. The formal complaints never made it to corporate. Elijah closed the folder, took a deep breath, and stood up. He walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. "I grew up watching my mother being followed around stores like this," he said quietly, being asked if she could actually afford the things she was looking at, even when she saved for months to buy something special. "I know," Chloe said softly. She had known Elijah for 15 years, had seen his rise from promising business, school graduate to visionary CEO. She understood the personal significance of this acquisition. "What about the new employee? Emma?" "Emma Parker," Chloe reported. 24, graduated from state with a degree in fashion merchandising. Started at Maison Leclerc 3 weeks ago. No red flags, good references from previous retail jobs. Seems to be the only one who's shown any discomfort with the store's culture. Elijah nodded. "I want to give her a chance. Everyone deserves at least that." He returned to the table and pulled over another folder, this one containing photos and reports from other Maison Leclerc locations. "The flagship store is the problem," he observed. "The others don't have the same toxic culture. They're underperforming, but for different reasons. Poor inventory management, outdated marketing strategies, lack of online presence." "Fixable problems," Chloe agreed. "All of this is fixable," Elijah said firmly, "but not with the current leadership in place." Their meeting was interrupted by a knock at the door. Justin Adams, Elijah's head of security and investigations, entered with a fresh stack of documents. "You're going to want to see this," he said, handing Elijah a USB drive. "We found surveillance footage from the store over the past 6 months. It's illuminating." Elijah plugged the drive into his laptop, and the three of them watched in silence as the footage played. The video showed multiple instances of discriminatory treatment. Priscilla directing employees to follow certain customers, Kyle mockingly imitating customers behind their backs, Brent showing visible disdain when helping people who didn't fit the store's preferred clientele. "Enough," Elijah said after several minutes. "I've seen what I need to see." He closed the laptop and turned to his team. "Tomorrow I'm going to visit their other locations incognito. I want to compare the customer experience firsthand." "I'll arrange it," Chloe said, already making notes on her tablet. "And I want a complete background check on all senior staff, including any social media history we can legally access," Elijah added, looking at Justin. "Already in progress," Justin assured him. As his team continued discussing logistics, Elijah's mind drifted back to his childhood in South Chicago. He could still see his mother's face, exhausted from working multiple jobs, but determined to give him every opportunity. He remembered how she would dress in her Sunday best just to go shopping, hoping it would shield her from the suspicious glances and condescending treatment. "We'll dress according to their expectations," she would tell him. "But we'll never lower ourselves to their standards." The memory strengthened his resolve. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about changing a system that had been broken for far too long. The next morning, Elijah visited 3 different Maison Leclerc locations wearing jeans and a simple sweater. The contrast was striking. While he didn't receive VIP treatment, the staff at these locations were professional and courteous. They assumed he might not be able to afford their products, but they still treated him with basic dignity. When he returned to his hotel, he found Emma Parker's personnel file waiting for him. As he read through it, a plan began to form in his mind. She wasn't just a potential ally, she could be a key part of the store's transformation. "She has potential," he told Chloe during their evening briefing. "But she needs to find her voice. Right now, she's too afraid to stand up for what she believes in." "Are you going to give her that chance?" Chloe asked. "I'm going to give her the opportunity," Elijah corrected. "What she does with it will be entirely up to her." Meanwhile, at Maison Leclerc, Emma was having the worst day of her short career. After Elijah's visit the previous day, Priscilla had Been on a rampage, demanding perfection from everyone and taking her anxiety out on the staff. Do you have any idea who that was? She had hissed at them during an emergency meeting. Elijah Grant. His firm manages billions in assets. He could buy this entire building without blinking. How was I supposed to know? Kyle had protested, looking pale. He dressed like a nobody the first time. That's the point, you idiot, Priscilla snapped. Rich people test stores all the time. It's a thing they do. Now, alone in the break room, Emma scrolled through articles about Elijah Grant on her phone. Forbes had called him the quiet revolutionary of retail, noting his track record of acquiring struggling luxury brands and transforming them into ethical powerhouses. His reputation for firing toxic management was well documented, as was his commitment to diversity and inclusion. She thought about the janitor's uniform, about Kyle's video, about all the times she'd stood by while customers were treated poorly based on their appearance. A knot of dread formed in her stomach. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's the new job going, honey?" Emma stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How could she explain that she'd landed her dream job, only to discover it was a nightmare dressed in designer clothes? Before she could reply, Kyle burst into the break room. "Emergency meeting. Now." "What's going on?" Emma asked, following him out. "Word just came down from corporate," Kyle said, his usual smugness replaced by genuine fear. "Meridian Capital Partners is buying us out." Emma froze. "Elijah Grant's company?" "The very same," Kyle confirmed grimly. "We're all screwed." As the staff gathered in the manager's office, Priscilla tried to maintain her composure, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her anxiety. "Listen up, everyone," she announced. "Yes, there's a potential acquisition in the works, but this changes nothing about how we operate. If anything, we need to be more exclusive, more luxury-focused than ever. Mr. Grant may be wealthy, but he doesn't understand our brand. Our clientele expects a certain environment, and we will continue to provide it." Emma watched as her colleagues nodded in agreement, apparently missing the irony of dismissing a billionaire as not understanding luxury. She thought about speaking up but remained silent. The memory of her student loans and rent payments kept her voice trapped in her throat. As the meeting dispersed, Brent cornered her. "I saw you talking to Grant," he said accusingly. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing important," Emma lied. "Just asking about products." Brent's eyes narrowed. "Keep your head down, girl. People who rock the boat tend to fall overboard." The threat wasn't subtle. As Brent walked away, Emma felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by something stronger, indignation, and the first stirrings of genuine anger. That night, alone in her apartment, Emma stared at Elijah's business card. She had a choice to make: remain silent and complicit, or take a stand for what she believed was right. Her finger hovered over her phone as she considered what to do next. 1 week after his reconnaissance mission at Maison Leclerc, Elijah stood in the elevator of the luxury department store, ascending to the executive floor. Chloe stood beside him, elegant in a charcoal suit, tablet in hand. The acquisition was now public knowledge, sending ripples through the fashion industry. Speculation ran wild about Elijah's plans for the troubled luxury brand. "Are you sure about this approach?" Chloe asked, breaking the silence. "We could handle this more quietly." "Some situations require a public reckoning," Elijah replied, adjusting his platinum cufflinks. "This is one of them." The elevator doors opened to reveal a long hallway leading to the store's main conference room. As they walked, employees stopped to stare, whispers following in their wake. News traveled fast in retail, and everyone knew why Elijah Grant was here today. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Priscilla sat rigidly at the table, her usual confidence replaced by thinly veiled panic. Kyle fidgeted with his tie, while Brent maintained a stony expression. Several other staff members, including Emma, were seated along the walls. Corporate representatives from the parent company occupied one end of the table, their expressions carefully neutral. Elijah took his place at the head of the table, Chloe beside him. For a moment he said nothing, simply observing the faces before him. The silence stretched uncomfortably until he finally spoke. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "As you know, Meridian Capital Partners has acquired Maison Leclerc. What you may not know is why I chose this particular brand." He placed a folder on the table, opening it deliberately. "I believe in second chances. I believe that businesses, like people, can transform when given the right opportunity and guidance." He looked up, his gaze sweeping the room. "But transformation requires honesty. It requires acknowledging what isn't working." Priscilla cleared her throat. "Mr. Grant, I assure you that our team is committed to upholding the highest standards of—" "Ms. Wilson," Elijah interrupted, "I'd prefer if you didn't speak just yet. I haven't finished." The room fell silent again. Emma, seated in the back corner, felt her heart hammering in her chest. "2 weeks ago," Elijah continued, "I walked into this store dressed in jeans and a simple shirt. I was handed a janitor's uniform and told it was all I could afford." He let the words hang in the air. "The next day, I returned in a designer suit, and suddenly I was worthy of your attention." Kyle's face drained of color as recognition dawned. Brent shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while Priscilla maintained her composure, though her knuckles were white as she gripped the edge of the table. "What followed was a comprehensive audit of this store's operations," Elijah said, nodding to Chloe, who distributed packets to everyone in the room. "The findings are troubling, to say the least." As people began flipping through the packets, gasps and murmurs filled the room. The documents detailed everything: the financial irregularities, the discriminatory practices, the customer complaints that had been buried, the toxic workplace culture that had been festering for years. "Ms. Wilson," Elijah said, turning to Priscilla, "would you care to explain why the store's petty cash account is consistently short by exactly $2,500 each quarter? Or perhaps why customer returns processed during your shifts show a 15% discrepancy between system records and actual inventory?" Priscilla's composure finally cracked. "These accusations are absurd. I've managed this store flawlessly for 8 years. Our clientele is the most exclusive in the city. We cater to a specific type of customer, and our methods reflect that reality." "And what type would that be, Ms. Wilson?" Elijah asked coolly. "People who can actually afford our products," she snapped, her true colors emerging. "Not people looking for handouts or special treatment because of their—" She caught herself, but it was too late. "Because of their what, Ms. Wilson?" Elijah pressed. "Their race? Their background? Please finish your thought." The corporate representatives shifted uncomfortably. One began typing rapidly on his phone, no doubt alerting higher-ups to the unfolding disaster. Elijah turned his attention to Kyle. "Mr. Thompson, perhaps you'd like to explain this." He slid a printout across the table, screenshots of Kyle's social media posts mocking customers, including the video of Elijah being handed the janitor's uniform. "Is this how Maison Leclerc trains its staff to treat potential customers?" Kyle swallowed hard. "It was just a joke," he mumbled. "Everyone does it." "Not everyone," Elijah corrected, his gaze shifting momentarily to Emma. "And it's not funny. It's unprofessional, discriminatory, and frankly bad business." Next, he addressed Brent. "Mr. Mitchell, your file is particularly concerning." He pulled out another folder, this one thicker than the others. 27 complaints of racial profiling in the past 5 years, all mysteriously resolved without any record reaching corporate offices. Brent's face flushed with anger. "You can't prove anything," he said defensively. "Those people were just looking for special treatment. I've been in this business for 30 years. I know a real customer when I see one." "And how exactly do you determine who's a real customer, Mr. Mitchell?" Elijah asked, his voice dangerously soft. The room fell silent as everyone waited for Brent's response. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally muttered, "You know what I mean." "I believe I do," Elijah said, "which is precisely the problem." The tension in the room was palpable. Some staff members looked ashamed, others defiant, a few simply scared. Emma sat frozen, her eyes fixed on Elijah, a mixture of awe and terror on her face. Elijah closed his folder and stood up. Luxury isn't about exclusion, it's about excellence, in products, in service, in experience. Somewhere along the way, Maison Leclerc forgot that. You began to believe that treating people poorly was somehow part of the luxury experience. He shook his head. That ends today. Priscilla, desperate to salvage the situation, attempted one last defense. Mr. Grant, perhaps there have been misunderstandings, but our sales numbers speak for themselves. We know our clientele. Do you? Elijah challenged. Your sales have declined by 23% over the past 2 years. Customer retention is at an all-time low. Meanwhile, your competitors who embrace inclusivity are thriving. He gestured to Chloe, who pulled up a PowerPoint presentation showing the stark contrast in performance metrics. But our brand identity, Priscilla began, is outdated, Elijah finished for her, and actively harmful to the business. He turned to address the entire room. I believe in second chances, but I also believe in accountability. Effective immediately, there will be changes to the leadership structure of this store. The corporate representatives looked at each other nervously. This was moving faster than they had anticipated. Ms. Wilson, Mr. Thompson, and Mr. Mitchell, Elijah continued. Your employment with Maison Leclerc is terminated effective immediately. Human Resources will oversee your exit process. Priscilla shot to her feet. You can't do this. I built this store. Into what exactly? Elijah asked, calmly. A place where success is measured by how many people you can exclude? Where employees are encouraged to mock customers online? Where racial profiling is standard practice? He shook his head. That's not success, Ms. Wilson. That's failure on a fundamental level. Kyle, now pale and shaking, turned on Emma. You, he accused. You told him everything, didn't you? You little traitor. All eyes turned to Emma, who seemed to shrink under the sudden attention. Elijah watched her carefully, wondering if she would find her voice or retreat into silence. Emma took a deep breath, stood up slowly, and looked directly at Kyle. No one needed to tell him anything, she said, her voice quiet but steady. You all did this to yourselves. I saw how you treated him that day. I saw how you treat anyone who doesn't fit your idea of who belongs here. I watched you laugh about it, post about it online, brag about making people feel small. Her voice gained strength with each word. That's not luxury. That's just cruelty, wearing an expensive label. A murmur ran through the room. Several junior staff members nodded in agreement, while others looked uncomfortable, caught between old loyalties and the undeniable truth of Emma's words. Priscilla's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little... She stepped toward Emma, but Elijah's voice cut through the tension. That's enough, Ms. Wilson. His tone left no room for argument. Security will escort you, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Mitchell, from the building. Your personal belongings will be sent to you after they've been reviewed for any company property. At his nod, security personnel who had been waiting discreetly outside entered the room. The reality of the situation finally seemed to dawn on Priscilla, whose anger gave way to shock. You're making a huge mistake, she said, grabbing her designer handbag. This store will fail without us. Actually, Elijah replied, I believe it will finally have the chance to succeed. As the three were escorted out, the remaining staff sat in stunned silence. The corporate representatives huddled together, whispering urgently about damage control and press statements. Elijah turned to address the remaining employees. To the rest of you, I offer a choice. Maison Leclerc is going to change, fundamentally and permanently. Those who share our vision for a luxury brand built on excellence, respect, and inclusivity are welcome to stay. Those who don't should tender their resignations by the end of the week. He looked directly at Emma. Those who have demonstrated integrity, even when it was difficult, will find opportunities for growth in the new Maison Leclerc. Emma felt tears pricking at her eyes as the weight of the moment hit her. She had stood up finally and been heard. Elijah concluded the meeting, and the room gradually emptied until only he, Chloe, and Emma remained. Ms. Parker, Elijah said, approaching her. Thank you for your honesty today. I should have spoken up sooner, Emma admitted, her voice thick with emotion. I knew what they were doing was wrong, but I was afraid of losing my job. Fear is a powerful motivator, Elijah acknowledged. But so is courage. You found yours. When it mattered. What happens now? Emma asked, glancing around the empty conference room. Now, Elijah said with a small smile, we rebuild. And I could use someone who understands both the old Maison Leclerc and the vision for the new one. Someone who knows the difference between luxury and exclusivity. Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her parents asking how her day was going. For the first time in weeks, she knew exactly how to answer. Outside the store, news of the dramatic shakeup was already spreading throughout the fashion industry. Social media was ablaze with speculation and rumors. Former customers who had been mistreated began sharing their stories online, creating a chorus of voices that had long gone unheard. Priscilla, Kyle, and Brent stood on the sidewalk, watching. As their access badges were deactivated, the doors to their former kingdom now firmly closed to them. The empire they had built on exclusion and arrogance was crumbling before their eyes. Inside, Elijah Grant prepared for Phase 2 of his plan, the complete transformation of Maison Leclerc from a symbol of exclusivity to a beacon of ethical luxury. The road ahead would be challenging, but as he looked at the determined face of Emma Parker and the capable presence of Chloe Roberts, he knew he had the right team to make it happen. The tipping point had been reached. There was no going back now, only forward, toward a future where luxury and humanity could coexist, where excellence didn't require exclusion, and where a janitor's uniform would never again be used as a weapon of humiliation. 3 days after the explosive confrontation at Maison Leclerc, Priscilla Wilson sat in her lavish apartment, surrounded by designer furniture that suddenly felt hollow. Her phone, once constantly buzzing with messages from industry contacts, had gone eerily silent. She refreshed her email for the 100th time. No responses to the feelers she'd put out for new positions at other luxury retailers. The morning news played in the background, the anchor's voice cutting through her thoughts. Fashion industry continues to reel from the shakeup at Maison Leclerc, where CEO Elijah Grant has terminated the store's top management following allegations of discrimination and financial impropriety. Industry insiders are calling it a watershed moment for luxury retail. Priscilla jabbed the remote, silencing the television. She poured herself another glass of wine, not caring that it was barely past noon. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just a week ago, she had been untouchable, the queen of her domain. Her phone finally chimed, a text from Kyle. Did you see the news? Grant's putting out a press release today. We need to get ahead of this. Across town, in a significantly more modest apartment, Emma Parker was having a very different morning. She stood in front of her closet, deliberating over her outfit with newfound purpose. Today wasn't just another workday. It was her first day as the interim floor manager of Maison Leclerc. The offer had come from Elijah himself, in a quiet moment after the dust of the confrontation had settled. You have integrity, he had told her. That's rarer than any fabric or gemstone we sell. Emma had protested. She was too inexperienced, too new. But Elijah had been firm. Sometimes fresh eyes are exactly what we need. As she selected a simple but elegant black dress, one she had saved for months to purchase, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. So proud of you, sweetheart. You stood up for what's right. Emma smiled, the knot of anxiety in her stomach loosening slightly. She still couldn't quite believe how drastically her life had changed in just a few days. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else: excitement, possibility, pride. When she arrived at the store, it felt like entering a different world. The physical space was the same, the gleaming displays, the carefully arranged merchandise, but the atmosphere had shifted. The remaining staff moved with a mixture of uncertainty and hope, watching Emma with curious eyes as she made her way to the manager's office, Priscilla's former domain. Chloe Roberts was waiting for her, sleek and professional in a tailored suit. Ready for your first day? She asked, offering Emma a warm smile. Honestly, I'm terrified, Emma admitted. Good, Chloe replied. That means you care. Together, they entered the office where Elijah was already waiting, reviewing documents at Priscilla's former desk. He stood when they entered, greeting Emma with a firm handshake. Before we begin the day, he said, I want to be clear about our mission going forward. Maison Leclerc is going to become a model of what luxury retail should be. Exceptional quality, exceptional service, and exceptional ethics. We're not just selling products, we're creating an experience that honors everyone who walks through those doors. Emma nodded, taking mental notes as Elijah continued outlining his vision. The transition would happen in phases. First, retraining the remaining staff, then revamping the store's policies and marketing, and finally, a grand reopening. That would signal Maison Leclerc's transformation to the world. Your role, Elijah told Emma, is crucial. You bridge the old and the new. You've seen firsthand what doesn't work, and now you'll help build what does. The responsibility was enormous, but as Emma listened, she felt increasingly certain that she was where she needed to be. This wasn't just about advancing her career, it was about being part of something meaningful. Meanwhile, at a trendy downtown cafe, Priscilla had convened an emergency meeting with Kyle and Brent. The three former Maison Leclerc leaders huddled around a small table, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. We need to fight back, Priscilla insisted, her manicured nails tapping aggressively on the table. Grant is destroying everything we built. Our reputations are on the line. What exactly do you suggest? Brent asked, looking haggard. His wife had been asking uncomfortable questions about the accusations, and his country club friends had suddenly stopped returning his calls. We go to the board, Priscilla said. Grant may have bought the company, but he still answers to someone. We present our case, that we were maintaining the exclusivity that made Maison Leclerc special, that his inclusive approach will destroy the brand's cachet. Kyle shifted uncomfortably. But what about the, financial stuff? The audit. Findings? Priscilla waved dismissively. Creative accounting, nothing more. Every retail operation has its quirks. And the racial profiling allegations? Brent asked quietly. Misunderstandings, Priscilla snapped. Customers looking for special treatment. The board will understand. They're business people, not social justice warriors. But even as she spoke, Priscilla could see the doubt in their eyes. The confidence that had once bound them together was fracturing under the weight of exposure. Back at Maison Leclerc, Emma's first day as interim manager was in full swing. Elijah had arranged for a staff meeting where he personally addressed everyone, explaining the changes ahead and offering honest answers to their questions and concerns. Will we be fired too? Asked one nervous sales associate. That depends entirely on you, Elijah replied candidly. Can you embrace a new approach to luxury retail? Can you treat every customer with dignity and respect, regardless of how they're dressed or what they look like? Can you focus on service rather than judgment? If so, there's absolutely a place for you here. By the end of the meeting, the mood had shifted from anxiety to cautious optimism. Even those who had been loyal to Priscilla could see the passion and vision Elijah brought to the table. More importantly, they could see the potential for growth and stability in a store that had been quietly failing under the previous management. As Emma made her rounds of the sales floor later that day, she was approached by several staff members who expressed relief at the changes. Priscilla made us feel like we always had to be looking down on someone, one confided. It was exhausting. The day wasn't without challenges. Some customers, accustomed to the exclusive atmosphere Priscilla had cultivated, were visibly disturbed by the more welcoming approach. A few made cutting remarks about lowering standards. Emma handled each situation with grace, explaining the store's new philosophy while assuring them that the quality of merchandise and service would only improve. By closing time, Emma was exhausted, but exhilarated. As she locked up the store, she caught her reflection in the glass door. She looked different somehow, more confident, more purposeful. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elijah. How was day one? She smiled as she typed her reply. Challenging, exciting, meaningful. Think we're onto something special. 1 week later, Priscilla's attempt to sway the corporate board had failed spectacularly. Not only had they refused to meet with her, but the company's legal team had sent a cease and desist letter, warning her that any further attempts to interfere with Maison Leclerc's operations would result in legal action. Desperate, she had reached out to her network of fashion industry contacts, hoping to rally support against Elijah's vision. But the response had been tepid at best. Some ignored her messages entirely. Others replied with non-committal platitudes. A few, those who had themselves faced discrimination at Maison Leclerc, responded with thinly veiled satisfaction at her downfall. The final blow came when Women's Wear Daily published a feature on Elijah Grant's acquisition and vision for Maison Leclerc, praising his innovative approach as the future of luxury retail. The article mentioned Priscilla only in passing, as an example of outdated leadership that confused exclusion with exclusivity. Sitting alone in her apartment, Priscilla finally faced the truth. Her empire had fallen, and there would be no glorious comeback. The fashion world was moving on without her. In a last desperate attempt to salvage something, she drafted an email to Elijah, offering to return to Maison Leclerc as a consultant to ensure a smooth transition. She spent hours crafting the icy message, striking a tone that she hoped would sound conciliatory without being pathetic. Elijah's response was swift and brief. "Thank you for your offer, Ms. Wilson, but we are moving in a different direction. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. No second chances, no redemption arc. Just the cold reality that some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt." While Priscilla's star was falling, Emma's was rising. Under Elijah and Chloe's guidance, she was blossoming as a leader, bringing fresh ideas and perspective to Maison Leclerc's transformation. Her genuine approach to customer service became the model for the store's new training program. 2 weeks after the shakeup, Maison Leclerc closed for renovations, not just of the physical space, but of its entire identity. When it reopened, a month later, the difference was striking. The grand reopening was a carefully orchestrated event that signaled the store's rebirth. The guest list included a diverse array of fashion influencers, industry leaders, and loyal customers. The merchandise had been thoughtfully curated to maintain the quality Maison Leclerc was known for, while expanding to include designers from varied backgrounds. Most importantly, the staff, a mix of retained employees and new hires, had been extensively retrained in Elijah's vision of luxury service. Attentive without being overbearing, knowledgeable without being condescending, welcoming to all while maintaining the special experience that made luxury shopping an event. Emma, now permanently installed as the store's general manager, stood proudly beside Elijah as he cut the ribbon on the new Maison Leclerc. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for fashion publications around the world. "This is just the beginning," Elijah told the assembled crowd. "Luxury should elevate everyone it touches, not just those who can afford to buy it, but those who create it, sell it, and even those who simply appreciate it from afar." As the guests explored the reimagined store, Emma caught sight of a familiar face among the crowd. Priscilla, attempting to blend in, watching the proceedings with a mixture of bitterness and disbelief. Their eyes met briefly, and then Priscilla turned and left, disappearing into the busy street outside. Emma felt a momentary pang of sympathy, quickly replaced by resolve. Priscilla had made her choices that had hurt countless people. Now she was facing the consequences of those choices. The new Maison Leclerc was no longer built on exclusion and judgment. It was built on excellence and integrity, values that would sustain it long after the spectacle of its rebirth had faded from the headlines. 6 months after the grand reopening, Maison Leclerc had not only recovered but was thriving. Sales had increased by 34%. Customer retention was at an all-time high, and industry publications were hailing Elijah Grant's vision as revolutionary. But success always attracts attention, not all of it welcome. Elijah sat in his office at Meridian Capital Partners, reviewing the latest financial reports from Maison Leclerc. The numbers were even better than projected, proof that ethical luxury wasn't just morally right, but financially sound. His contemplation was interrupted when Chloe entered, her expression unusually serious. "We have a situation," she said, placing a folder on his desk. Trendex Corporation is making a play for Maison Leclerc. They've approached several of our board members with an attractive buyout offer. Elijah's brow furrowed as he reviewed the documents. Trendex was a massive international conglomerate, known for acquiring luxury brands and maximizing profits through aggressive cost-cutting and mass-market expansion, essentially the antithesis of everything he was trying to build. They're offering significantly above market value, Chloe noted. Some of the board members are interested. Of course they are, Elijah said, closing the folder. Quarterly profits always speak louder than long-term vision. What do you want to do? Chloe asked. Elijah stared out the window, considering their options. He had invested heavily in Maison Leclerc, not just financially, but emotionally. It had become a model for what he believed luxury retail could be. But now, that vision was threatened. Set up a board meeting, he said finally. It's time to remind them why we acquired Maison Leclerc in the first place. The pressure from investors and board members mounted over the next few days. Emails and calls poured in, all emphasizing the same point. The Trendex offer was too good to refuse from a purely financial perspective. Elijah maintained his composure, but privately, the situation was taking a toll. He found himself working later each night, analyzing every angle, searching for a solution that would preserve his vision while satisfying the board's appetite for returns. One evening, as he worked late in his office, there was a knock at the door. It was Emma, who had come to Meridian for a scheduled meeting about Maison Leclerc's next phase of expansion. Sorry to interrupt, she said, noticing the stacks of documents and the tension in Elijah's expression. Is everything okay? Elijah hesitated, then decided on honesty. Trendex Corporation is trying to buy Maison Leclerc. The board is tempted by their offer. Emma's face fell. Trendex. But they'll destroy everything we've built. Their business model is all about cutting corners and mass production. I know, Elijah said, rubbing his temples. But their offer is substantial. From a purely financial standpoint, it's hard to argue against. Emma was quiet for a moment, then spoke with unexpected conviction. It's not just about the money, though, is it? What we're doing at Maison Leclerc, it's changing people's lives, not just customers but employees, too. She told him about Sarah, a new hire who had previously been rejected by 3 other luxury retailers because she didn't have the right look. About Marcus, a customer who had been followed around stores his entire life, but now felt welcomed. At Maison Leclerc, about vendors from diverse backgrounds who were finally getting shelf space in a prestigious location. These aren't just nice stories, Emma insisted. This is the future of retail. If we give up now, we're sending a message that ethics is just a marketing strategy, not a core value. Elijah studied her, struck by the passion in her voice. She had grown so much from the timid new employee who had been afraid to speak up. You're right, he said finally. And I think you just helped me find our way forward. The board meeting was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Elijah and his team worked tirelessly on a counter-proposal, one that would satisfy the board's financial concerns while preserving the soul of Maison Leclerc. Across town, in a sleek corporate office, another meeting was taking place. Chloe Roberts sat across from Jonathan Pierce, the CEO of Trendex Corporation, her expression giving away nothing of her inner thoughts. I appreciate you meeting with me, Ms. Roberts, Pierce said, leaning back in his custom leather chair. I think we both know Elijah is fighting a losing battle. The board sees the value in our offer. Mr. Grant is quite committed to his vision, Chloe replied diplomatically. Vision doesn't pay dividends, Pierce countered. Look, I admire what Grant's trying to do. It's a nice story. The black CEO transforming luxury retail. Great PR. But at the end of the day, business is business. He slid a folder across the desk. We are prepared to create a position for you in the new structure, Senior VP of Brand Strategy. Better compensation, more resources, bigger playing field. Chloe glanced at the offer, her face impassive. That's very generous. Just think about it, Pierce said smoothly. Grant's a visionary, but his approach is limited. Trendex can take Maison Leclerc global in ways he can't even imagine. And what happens to his ethical standards? The inclusive hiring practices? The vendor diversity program? Pierce smiled thinly. We'll keep whatever elements make financial sense. The rest, well, luxury has operated on exclusivity for centuries. One store in one city isn't going to change that. Chloe thanked him for the offer, promising to consider it, and left the meeting with the folder tucked into her briefcase. Instead of returning to Meridian, she took a detour to Maison Leclerc. Thurfoss store was busy, filled with a diverse mix of customers being attended to by an equally diverse staff. She watched from near the entrance as Emma moved through the space, greeting people by name, ensuring that everyone received the same exceptional service, regardless of how they were dressed or what they might spend. This wasn't just a retail operation, it was a movement, and Chloe had a choice to make about which side of history she wanted to be on. The day of the board meeting arrived. Elijah entered the conference room to find all 12 board members present, along with representatives from Trendex Corporation, their expressions confident, already counting their profits. Elijah began his presentation calmly, acknowledging the financial attractiveness of the Trendex offer, before pivoting to what would be lost if they accepted it. He shared data showing the long-term growth potential of their ethical approach, the positive press coverage, the customer loyalty metrics that were off the charts. What we're building isn't just a store, he told them. It's a new paradigm for luxury retail, one that will outlast trends and economic fluctuations because it's built on timeless values: quality, integrity, respect. The board members listened politely, but Elijah could see skepticism in their eyes. They were business people, focused on quarterly returns and share prices. His vision, however compelling, wasn't speaking to their primary concerns. It was time for his secret weapon. Before you make your decision, Elijah said, there's someone else you should hear from. The door opened and Emma entered, followed by a parade of people, employees, customers, vendors, community members, all of whom had been touched by the new Maison Leclerc. One by one, they shared their stories, putting human faces to the abstract concept of ethical luxury. The energy in the room shifted as board members found themselves confronted not with charts and projections, but with real people whose lives had been changed. This wasn't about rejecting a good offer, it was about affirming a better path. When the last speaker finished, Elijah revealed his counter-proposal. Maison Leclerc would remain independent, but they would expand their model to 3 new locations in the coming year. The ethical approach would be codified into the company's charter, making it legally binding for any future owners. We can deliver the returns you want, Elijah concluded, without sacrificing the values that make us special. The room was silent as the board members exchanged glances, weighing the financial logic against the powerful testimonials they had just heard. The chairman spoke first. This is a compelling vision, Mr. Grant, but vision alone doesn't satisfy. Shareholders, no, Elijah agreed. Results do, and our results speak for themselves. He nodded to Chloe, who distributed the latest performance reports, numbers that showed not just strong current returns, but projected growth that would eventually surpass even Trendex's optimistic scenarios. The Trendex representatives shifted, uncomfortably, their slam dunk acquisition suddenly in jeopardy. After hours of deliberation, the board emerged with their decision. They would reject Trendex's offer and back Elijah's expansion plan. The ethical framework would be incorporated into the company's governing documents, ensuring that the soul of Maison Leclerc would be protected, even if ownership changed in the future. It was a victory, but Elijah knew it was just one battle in a longer war. The pressures of the market would never truly disappear, and there would always be those who believed that exclusivity and elitism were essential to luxury. As he left the boardroom, Elijah found Emma waiting in the hallway, her expression hopeful. Well, she asked. We won, he said simply. Maison Leclerc stays independent, and we expand on our terms. Emma's face broke into a radiant smile. I knew they'd see it your way eventually. Not my way, Elijah corrected. Our way. This victory belongs to everyone who believed in what we're building. Together they walked out of the corporate headquarters and into the bright afternoon sunlight, discussing plans for the future. a future where luxury and ethics weren't competing values but complementary ones. Across town, Priscilla Wilson watched a news report about Maison Leclerc's planned expansion, the announcement of which had caused the company's stock to jump 7% in a single day. Her latest venture, a small boutique catering to the ultra-wealthy, was struggling to attract both customers and investors. She turned off the television, unable to bear the reminder of what she had lost. The world had moved on without her, embracing a vision of luxury that she had never believed could succeed. As the sun set over the city, Elijah Grant stood on the rooftop garden of his penthouse, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From the boy whose mother had been followed around stores to the man who was changing how those stores operated, it wasn't about revenge or even justice. It was about transformation. The janitor's uniform that had once been handed to him as an insult now hung framed in his office, a reminder of why he had started this journey and why it mattered so much to finish it. 1 year after the transformation of Maison Leclerc, Elijah Grant stood on a stage at the International Luxury Forum in Milan, addressing a packed audience of industry leaders, designers, and journalists. The spotlight illuminated his confident stance as he delivered the keynote speech that would cement his reputation as more than just a successful businessman, but a visionary who was reshaping an entire industry. "Luxury isn't about exclusion," he said, his voice resonating through the grand hall. "It's about exceptional quality, craftsmanship, and experience. For too long, the industry has confused exclusivity with exclusion, believing that to maintain prestige, we must keep people out. But true luxury invites people in. It elevates, it inspires, it transforms." The audience listened with rapt attention as Elijah shared metrics proving that Maison Leclerc's ethical approach hadn't just been morally right, it had been remarkably profitable. Sales were up 62% year over year. Customer retention had doubled. Employee satisfaction scores were at industry-leading levels. "What began as an experiment in one store has become a movement," Elijah continued. "Our 3 new locations are outperforming projections, and we're proving that you don't need to compromise values for value." In the front row, Chloe Roberts smiled, tablet in hand, already fielding inquiries from brands interested in partnerships. Beside her sat Emma Parker, now regional director overseeing all 4 Maison Leclerc locations. Emma watched her mentor with pride, remembering the trembling new hire she had been just 2 years ago, afraid to speak up against injustice. As the applause thundered through the hall at the conclusion of Elijah's speech, he spotted a familiar face in the crowd, the fashion editor who had written the scathing piece about Priscilla's downfall in Women's Wear Daily. She gave him a slight nod, acknowledgement of a prediction fulfilled. Backstage, Elijah was surrounded by well-wishers and industry insiders, eager to align themselves with his rising star. Everyone wanted a piece of his success, to be associated with the man who was being hailed as the future of luxury retail. "Mr. Grant," called a voice as the crowd thinned. "A moment of your time?" Elijah turned to find Richard Harmon, CEO of Lux Global, one of the largest luxury conglomerates in the world. Harmon was old school, known for his traditional approach and resistance to change. "That was quite a speech," Harmon said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Inspiring stuff." "Thank you," Elijah replied, instantly wary of the man's tone. "Though between us," Harmon continued, lowering his voice, "this whole ethical luxury angle is a nice marketing ploy, but surely you don't expect it to last? Consumers are fickle. They'll move on to the next trend soon enough." Elijah's expression remained neutral, but his voice took on an edge. "It's not a marketing ploy, Mr. Harmon. It's a fundamental shift in how luxury operates, and the numbers suggest it's resonating deeply with consumers." Harmon's facade of friendliness slipped slightly. "Numbers can be manipulated, Mr. Grant. The truth is, luxury has always been built on exclusivity. It's in the DNA of the industry. Your little experiment might be generating buzz now, but when the novelty wears off, you'll find yourself back where everyone else is, catering to the elite few who can truly appreciate what we offer." "Perhaps," Elijah replied coolly, "you're confusing appreciation with access. In my experience, Understanding quality isn't limited to those with platinum cards. Harmon's smile tightened. We'll see. The old guard isn't as easily displaced as you might think. Not everyone in this industry is thrilled with the direction you're pushing. As Harmon walked away, Chloe approached, having overheard the exchange. He's not wrong about one thing, she said quietly. You've made enemies. Powerful ones. Change always does, Elijah replied. Back at their hotel suite that evening, Elijah, Chloe, and Emma gathered to discuss the day's events and the road ahead. The suite overlooked Milan's historic center, the lights of the ancient city twinkling. Against the night sky, a reminder of how traditions could persist for centuries. Harmon wasn't just posturing, Chloe warned, reviewing reports on her tablet. We're hearing chatter that several major players are actively working to undermine our expansion. They're pressuring suppliers not to work with us, spreading rumors about quality issues, even approaching our staff with lucrative offers to jump ship. They're scared, Emma observed. We're proving that their model isn't the only way to succeed. Elijah nodded, pacing thoughtfully. We anticipated resistance, but we need to be prepared for it to get worse before it gets better. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Frowning, he opened the notification to find a breaking story from a prominent business publication. Trouble at Maison Leclerc. Sources report quality concerns and financial strain as expansion overreaches. He passed the phone to Chloe, who scanned the article with narrowing eyes. This is a hit piece, she said. These anonymous sources are clearly fabricated. Our financial reports are public. Anyone can see we're exceeding projections. It doesn't matter if it's true, Elijah said grimly. It only matters if people believe it. So what do we do? Emma asked, her face etched with concern. Elijah walked to the window, gazing out at the city. For a moment, he was transported back to his childhood, watching his mother face discrimination with quiet dignity, fighting systems designed to keep people like them in their place. We do what we've always done, he said finally, turning back to them. We let our work speak for itself, but we also fight back, strategically and intelligently. Chloe, prepare a comprehensive response to this article with real numbers and customer testimonials. Emma, double down on quality control at all locations. Make sure we're beyond reproach. He paused, his expression resolute. And I think it's time to accelerate our plans for Phase 2. The Fashion Academy? Chloe asked, surprised. We weren't planning to launch that for another year. The best defense is a good offense, Elijah replied. If they want to attack our model, let's expand it. The Maison Leclerc Academy will train the next generation of luxury retail professionals in our approach. Ethical, inclusive, exceptional. Emma's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. We're not just creating a store, we're creating a legacy. As they continued planning late into the night, none of them noticed the figure watching their hotel from a cafe across the street. Priscilla Wilson lowered her expensive sunglasses, her once immaculate appearance now slightly disheveled, despite her designer clothes. She sipped her espresso while scrolling through the hit piece on her phone, a small smile playing at her lips. Her fashion boutique had failed within 6 months, her reputation in tatters, but she still had connections, including a former classmate who now worked as Richard Harmon's assistant. It had taken every favor she had left, but she'd managed to get Harmon's ear, to plant seeds of doubt about Elijah's vision. Enjoy it while it lasts, Mr. Grant, she murmured, putting down her empty cup. The fashion world has a long memory, and I'm not done yet. The following morning, as Elijah prepared for another day of meetings, he received an unexpected call from Justin Adams, his head of security. We've detected something concerning, Justin reported. Someone's been accessing sensitive company files, expansion plans, supplier contracts, staff personal information. Elijah's brow furrowed. A data breach? Not exactly, Justin hesitated. The access came from within, using Chloe's credentials. Elijah went still, processing this information. Chloe had been with him from the beginning, his most trusted lieutenant. The thought that she might be working against him was almost inconceivable. And yet, He remembered the offer Trendex had made her. The board meeting where she had seemed unusually quiet. The fact that she had been meeting privately with industry. Contacts, meetings that didn't appear on her official calendar. Keep monitoring, he instructed Justin. But keep this between us for now. Throughout the day's meetings, Elijah maintained his professional demeanor, but he watched Chloe with new eyes, noting her interactions with competitors, the way she guarded her phone, how she stepped out for important calls that lasted longer than usual. That evening, at a gala celebrating Italian craftsmanship, Elijah found himself momentarily alone with Chloe on a terrace overlooking the city. "Beautiful night," he commented, standing beside her at the stone balustrade. She agreed, sipping champagne. "The response to your speech has been overwhelming. 3 more brands have reached out about partnership opportunities." "And Richard Harmon?" Elijah asked casually. "Any response from his camp?" Chloe's expression remained neutral, but Elijah noticed her grip tighten slightly on her glass. "Nothing official." "Interesting," Elijah said. "I would have expected some reaction after your meeting with his deputy yesterday." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken accusations. Finally, Chloe turned to face him directly. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "About your secret meetings? Or about you accessing files you had no reason to view?" Elijah's voice was calm, betraying none of the hurt and disappointment he felt. Chloe didn't deny it. "It's not what you think, Elijah." "Then what is it?" he challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like betrayal." She took a deep breath. "I've been gathering intelligence. Harmon and his allies are planning something big, a coordinated effort to discredit Maison Leclerc, to paint your vision as a failed experiment. They've even brought Priscilla Wilson into their fold as a consultant, using her knowledge of the store's operations." Elijah's expression hardened at the mention of Priscilla. "And you didn't think to tell me this because I needed to know how deep it went," Chloe explained. "If I told you, you might have reacted too quickly, tipped our hand before we understood the full scope of their plan. So you went undercover? Let them think you were willing to switch sides?" Chloe nodded. "It was the only way to gain their trust, to learn what they're planning." Elijah studied her face, searching for signs of deception. "And what exactly are they planning?" "A coordinated campaign, media hits, supplier disruption, poaching key staff. But the centerpiece is scheduled for next week's Luxury Innovation Summit in New York. Harmon plans to present a case study of Maison Leclerc as a cautionary tale of prioritizing social agendas over sound business practices. He's manipulated data to make it look like our success is smoke and mirrors." Elijah absorbed this information, his mind already racing ahead to potential countermoves. "Why should I believe you now? How do I know this isn't part of their plan?" In response, Chloe handed him her phone, unlocked. "See for yourself. Everything I've gathered is there. I've been building a case, collecting evidence to expose their tactics." Elijah scrolled through emails, recordings, documents, all pointing to a sophisticated campaign to undermine everything he had built. Among them was a particularly damning email from Priscilla to Harmon, outlining weaknesses in Maison Leclerc's structure that could be exploited. When he finished, he returned the phone to Chloe, his expression unreadable. "I need time to process this." "Of course," she said, understanding in her eyes. "But we don't have much time to respond. The summit is in 5 days." As Elijah walked away, his mind churned with conflicting emotions. He had built his career on trust and integrity, the very values Maison Leclerc now embodied. But in a world where dirty tactics and backroom deals were the norm, was there room for those values? Or was he fighting a losing battle against an industry unwilling to change? 4 days before the Luxury Innovation Summit, Elijah sat alone in his Milan hotel suite, the evidence Chloe had gathered spread before him. After hours of verification, he had confirmed its authenticity. Chloe had indeed been working to protect Maison Leclerc, not betray it. But the challenge ahead remained daunting. Richard Harmon and his allies had crafted a narrative that, while false, was persuasive. They had resources, connections, and the weight of tradition behind them. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Emma, concern etched on her face. "Chloe told me what's happening," she said as he let her in. "What's our plan?" "I'm working on it," Elijah replied, gesturing to the documents. "But I'm starting to wonder if we're fighting against the inevitable. Maybe this industry is too entrenched in its old ways." Emma looked surprised. "That doesn't sound like the Elijah Grant I know." "The Elijah Grant you know has never faced this level of coordinated opposition," he said wearily. "They're not just attacking our business model. They're attacking the very idea that luxury can be ethical and inclusive." Emma was quiet for a moment, then walked to the window. "Do you remember what you said to me on my first day as manager? That Maison Leclerc wasn't just about selling products. It was about creating an experience that honors everyone who walks through the doors." She turned back to him. "That vision changed my life. It changed the lives of our staff, our customers, even our suppliers. Are we really going to let a bunch of old men in boardrooms take that away?" Elijah studied her, seeing not just the fashionable, confident executive she had become, but traces of the young woman who had once been too afraid to speak up against injustice. Her growth was perhaps the most tangible evidence of what his vision could accomplish. "No," he said finally, resolve hardening in his voice. "We're not." The next 3 days were a flurry of activity as Elijah, Chloe, and Emma prepared their counteroffensive. They worked around the clock, reaching out to allies, gathering testimonials, preparing their own presentation for the summit. Elijah called in favors from journalists, designers, even celebrities who had embraced Maison Leclerc's ethical approach. On the morning of the summit, Elijah addressed his team in their New York hotel suite. "Whatever happens today, remember that truth is on our side. We're not just defending a business model, we're defending a vision of what luxury can and should be." The Luxury Innovation Summit was held at a prestigious venue in Manhattan, drawing the industry's elite from around the world. Richard Harmon's presentation was scheduled for the morning session, with Elijah slated to speak in the afternoon. As they took their seats in the auditorium, Elijah spotted Priscilla in the audience, sitting close to Harmon, a victorious smile playing at her lips. She thought she was witnessing his downfall, the vindication of her approach. Harmon took the stage to polite applause, his silver hair and bespoke suit projecting an image of distinguished authority. His presentation was masterfully crafted. Slides, showing manipulated data that suggested Maison Leclerc's ethical approach was unsustainable. Quotes from industry experts, predicting its imminent failure. While Mr. Grant's experiment has generated considerable PR, Harmon concluded, the numbers tell the true story. Ethical luxury is an oxymoron, a well-intentioned but fundamentally flawed concept that confuses the very nature of what luxury represents. It's time we return to the proven model that has sustained this industry for centuries. The applause was tepid but respectful. Harmon's message had resonated with many in the room, those who had built careers on the very exclusivity Elijah was challenging. During the lunch break, Elijah was approached by several attendees who expressed sympathy, even suggesting he adjust his approach before it was too late. Others avoided him entirely, not wanting to be associated with what they perceived as a failing venture. But Elijah remained calm, knowing that the afternoon would bring their opportunity. When it was finally his turn to speak, Elijah took the stage with quiet confidence. Instead of immediately addressing Harmon's claims, he began with a story. "When I was 8 years old," he said, "my mother saved for months to buy a special dress for my aunt's wedding. When she went to a high-end store to make the purchase, she was followed, questioned, and made to feel that she didn't belong there. Despite having the money, despite being a legitimate customer, she was judged based solely on her appearance." The audience shifted uncomfortably. "That experience taught me something profound about the power of retail spaces. They can elevate or diminish, include or exclude, honor or humiliate. Years later, I walked into Maison Leclerc and was handed a janitor's uniform because, dressed simply, I couldn't possibly afford the clothes they sold." A murmur ran through the crowd. "I didn't acquire Maison Leclerc out of revenge," Elijah continued. I did it because I saw an opportunity to reshape what luxury means, to prove that excellence and ethics are not competing values but complementary ones. With that introduction, he launched into his presentation, not defensive justifications but hard data showing Maison Leclerc's sustained growth, customer testimonials spanning all demographics, and designer partnerships that had flourished. Under the new model, Mr. Harmon suggests that ethical luxury is unsustainable, Elijah said, directly addressing his opponent's claims. But I would argue that it's the old model that's becoming unsustainable. Today's consumers don't just want beautiful products. They want beautiful values behind those products. He then invited Emma to join him on stage. She shared her personal journey from new hire to regional director, emphasizing how the ethical approach had transformed not just the business, but the people within it. Next came a video compilation of testimonials from customers, employees, and partners, all speaking to the impact of Maison Leclerc's vision. The diversity of voices was striking, from celebrities to everyday people, all united in their appreciation for a luxury experience that valued them as humans, not just as wallets. For his conclusion, Elijah revealed their biggest announcement. Yet, Maison Leclerc would be taking their company public with an innovative structure that enshrined their ethical commitments in the corporate charter, making them legally binding for any future leadership. This isn't just about one company or one vision, Elijah declared. This is about creating a pathway for others to follow. By going public with these values locked in, we're inviting everyone, investors, customers, employees, to be part of a movement that's redefining luxury for a new era. The applause began slowly, then built to a thunderous ovation. Even those who had been skeptical couldn't deny the power of the vision Elijah had presented. Not just words, but results. Not just promises, but proof. As he left the stage, Elijah caught Priscilla's eye. Her expression had shifted from smug anticipation to stunned disbelief. Beside her, Harmon sat rigidly, his jaw clenched in frustration. In the days that followed, the industry buzzed with news of Maison Leclerc's public offering. The initial response exceeded all expectations, with investors eager to be part of what financial analysts were calling the future of luxury retail. The stock opened 30% above the estimated range and continued to climb. 1 month later, Elijah stood on the balcony of his New York penthouse, watching the sun set over the city. Chloe joined him, handing him a glass of champagne. "To making history," she toasted. "The fastest-growing luxury IPO in a decade." Elijah clinked his glass against hers. "To the team that made it possible." "Have you seen this?" Chloe asked, showing him her tablet. On the screen was a news article announcing Richard Harmon's early retirement from Lux Global, with unnamed sources citing strategic differences with the board as the reason for his departure. "The old guard is changing," she observed. "Slowly, but surely." "And Priscilla?" Elijah asked. "Last I heard, she was trying to pitch a reality show about her fashion comeback," Chloe replied with a wry smile. "No takers so far." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Emma, who burst onto the balcony with uncharacteristic excitement. "You won't believe this," she said breathlessly. "I just got off the phone with Vogue. They want to do a feature on the Maison Leclerc Academy. They're calling it The New Face of Luxury Education." Elijah smiled, genuinely pleased. The academy had been Emma's project from conception to execution, and its success was a testament to her growth as a leader. "That's fantastic," he said. "You've earned it." As they celebrated this latest victory, Elijah's phone buzzed with a text. It was from his mother. "So proud of you, son. You didn't just change a store, you're changing an industry." Later that evening, after Chloe and Emma had left, Elijah returned, to the balcony alone. The city lights twinkled below, each one representing a life, a story, a possibility. He thought about the janitor's uniform, now framed in his office, a reminder of where this journey had begun. What had started as one man's response to an act of discrimination had evolved into something much larger, a movement that was reshaping, not just luxury retail, but the very notion of what success could look like in business. It wasn't just about selling clothes or accessories, It was about creating spaces where everyone could experience the dignity of being valued, where excellence didn't require exclusion, where profit and purpose could coexist harmoniously. As he looked out over the vast cityscape, Elijah felt a profound sense of peace. The road had been difficult, the challenges formidable. But standing here now, with Maison Leclerc thriving and expanding, with lives being changed through their approach, he knew it had all been worth it. This wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning of a new chapter for Maison Leclerc, for luxury retail, and for an industry learning sometimes reluctantly that true luxury wasn't about keeping people out. It was about welcoming them in, with dignity, respect, and a genuine appreciation for the humanity they brought with them, regardless of what they wore or where they came from. That was Elijah Grant's legacy, and it was just getting started. What would you do if you had the power to transform an industry that once rejected you? Could you use that power for change rather than revenge? If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Tales of courage that remind us how a single moment of disrespect can spark a revolution of dignity.